I'm delighted to be here today to represent the President, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, on this occasion of the passing out parade of the cadets of the 64th Regular Corps of the Army, Navy, and Air Force, the 65 Regular Corps of the Navy and Air Force, and the Short Service Corps 44 of the Army. A year ago, the President himself was here for this purpose. And it's a great honor for me to be here today on his behalf to commemorate this important occasion with our armed forces. Today's graduation parade marks another important milestone in the history of the Nigerian Defense Academy, as it carries out its mandate of producing competent, committed, and patriotic officers who will take pride of place in the various services and formations of the armed forces. The graduation is even more remarkable in the sense that it is a combined graduation for the 64th Regular Corps, the 65 Regular Corps of the Navy and Air Force, and the Short Service Corps 44 of the Army, respectively. I'm told that present among the cadets passing out today are 4 nationals of Togo and 1 from the Republic of Benin. This is a long-standing tradition the NDA has, over the years, in the spirit of African brotherhood and cooperation, trained cadets from various African countries, Liberia, Togo, Sierra Leone, Niger, Central African Republic, Zimbabwe, Uganda, Burkina Faso, and the Republic of Chad. Let me especially commend you for the spectacular parade this morning. The order, the synchronization, the precision, the creativity, and the discipline exhibited was simply outstanding. Your Excellencies, Service Chiefs, the world has changed a great deal in the time since today's graduating classes enrolled into the NDA. The threats that confront us as a nation and as a planet have evolved and continue to evolve. 40 years ago, a speech like this would have been situated firmly within the context of the Cold War, with its well-defined ideologies and distinct warring parties. Today we speak of non-state actors and of asymmetric warfare, and are confronted by enemies whose identities are as nebulous as their motives. It feels like yesterday when the earliest high-profile Boko Haram suicide bombings happened in Nigeria. It was a surreal moment, something that no one associated with Nigeria. It was not uncommon at that time to hear people argue that the perpetrators must have been of foreign origin, as it was not in the nature or personality of Nigerians to be suicide bombers. This was only about 6 years ago. In the time since, we've come to grow accustomed to seeing some of these kinds of activity, and by Nigerians no less. The targets evolved rapidly from symbols of authority, like the police headquarters and the United Nations building in Abuja, to encompass soft targets such as bus stations, religious houses, markets. And again, very quickly, we started to see even a trend of female suicide bombers, children. It's worthy of note that until about 2013, the phenomenon of female suicide bombers was virtually unknown, even in the Boko Haram insurgency. A short 4 years later, it is one of the defining elements of the insurgency. Young girls who are completely oblivious of what they're about to do, laden with explosives and sent off as harbingers of death and destruction. I want to say that we commend the Nigerian military for quickly adapting to the circumstances and the situation, and for showing excellent professionalism in decimating the Boko Haram system and in ensuring that they're no longer effective as a fighting force. This swift evolution in suicide bombings is a perfect illustration of the nature of the threats that nations face today. Unpredictable, asymmetric, constantly adapting to changing conditions, driven by a compulsive need to inflict maximum damage with minimal effort. This is therefore the question we ought to be asking ourselves today. Are we, and when I say we, I refer to our armed forces, evolving with a similar speed and urgency? Are we adapting with a similar nimbleness? There are questions that must confront us daily. How do we evolve rules of engagement in asymmetric warfare situations? Should we be redefining the borders of the Geneva Convention in the light of military engagements with armed militant combatants? Can we observe the same human rights rules where suicide bombers and persons determined to die and to take with them as many innocent lives as possible are the enemies that we must confront? What are the borders of the right to privacy and freedom of expression on the internet? What is the responsibility of nations of the world in policing the internet, which has become a virtual training ground for much good and as much evil? Some of the early analysis of yesterday's bombings in a London tube station suggest that tutorials for making the explosive devices used were actually found on the internet. The question that we must ask ourselves is, what then is the responsibility of those charged with security of lives and property? We must also answer the question of how to defeat the ideologies that promote mindless killings and anarchy. But just as important as these issues around conflict are the issues also around how the military can, in the process of innovating or thinking through military uses of science and technology, add real value to society and the nation that it has sworn to defend. Let me speak briefly about the relationship between the military and scientific innovation and how both have historically shaped and influenced each other. Centuries ago, inventions like the wheel and gunpowder forever changed the nature of war. National armies wasted little time taking advantage of these innovations in the endless battle to gain an edge over existing and emerging enemies. In a similar manner, the military has also spearheaded technology and practices that civilians have latched onto to alter human civilization as we know it. The one that comes to mind most readily is the internet, originating from the 1960s Advanced Research Projects Agency network of the United States Department of Defense. 5 decades on, the internet has turned out to be perhaps the most definitive invention in the history of mankind, creating unprecedented social, economic, and political opportunity. That same military has also been credited with the invention of the Global Positioning System, GPS, now so common that every smartphone and car would use it to ascertain locations. But the network of satellites was originally set up by the Department of Defense in the US in the 1970s. President Ronald Reagan ordered the GPS to be made available to civilians once it was completed. And Bill Clinton later declared that the highest quality GPS signal should be available as well. How about radar? This system was also invented by the military and was used as of the Second World War for purely military purposes. But today, it is used for a variety of purposes, both military and civilian, including air traffic control and weather forecasting. Indeed, inadvertently, it was discovered that the microwaves transmitted from radar during the Second World War could also cook food, which led to the post-war creation of the microwave oven. The use of unarmed aerial devices or drones today for surveillance, photography, and even for the delivery of mail to rural areas originated from the development of the devices by the military in the early 20th century. The world I've just described is the one that today's cadets graduate into, placed side by side with a contemporary context. All that we see today are the interesting, innovative challenges that lie before you. At this point, let me say that I'm pleased to note that the NDA has itself been positioning it as a hub for innovation. I'm already aware of inventions such as the automated pop-up target system, a multi-purpose combat mobile robot, and perimeter surveillance robots, which the NDA has showcased at various science and technology exhibitions in the recent past. This is laudable, and I urge you to sustain the culture. I'd also urge you to collaborate more extensively with the private sector for research and innovation. All around the country, technology hubs are springing up and are attracting our nation's brightest talents and breaking new technological ground. I'm convinced that the military would make its presence felt in this area easily. Let me again commend the management of the NDA for your efforts so far in adapting your curriculum and programs to contemporary realities. I've been told of the recent paradigm shift in the Academy's training calendar, such that Naval and Air Force cadets now spend only 4 years in the Academy and then move on to their respective bases in place of the old system that saw them spend all 5 years in the Academy. By allowing them to spend their final year within their respective bases is a clear indication of the commitment producing better trained and better prepared Naval and Air Force graduates. To the graduating students of today, I have this charge. You belong to a special breed of young Nigerians. You model the highest forms of patriotism and love of country, because as armed forces personnel, you have sworn to defend this nation with your lives. Besides, you have come from every state, every ethnic group, and you belong to different faiths. Yet, by living together, by rigorous training and drills, studying together, you have formed bonds which make you brothers and sisters indeed, ready to confront any situation, even life-threatening situations, shoulder to shoulder. This is the type of nation that we want to build. In turn, the nation has offered you its best training and will continue to do so. You have an obligation to commit yourself to the never-ending task of nation building, especially at a time such as this, when our country is urgently in need of unity, cohesion, peace. As you join your senior colleagues in the field, you'll be obligated to contribute your own quota to the defense of your fatherland. For the world-class training that you have received in the academy, I'm convinced that you will discharge your duties professionally and responsibly, and that in your hands, the future holds great promise for our national defense and security. And to the upper echelon of the military, let me leave this message. The future of our country depends on the type of training, obtaining, and education that we give to these gallant and determined young Nigerians. They have, by the successful completion of their education here, proven that they are capable of achieving set goals, breaking new ground. And so I commend once again our men and women in the armed forces who have kept faith with the current democratic dispensation for the past 18 years. The subordination of the military to civil authority has been a cherished age-long practice that has promoted military professionalism in all aspects and in all parts of the world. It's a tradition that must be sustained and strengthened in our country. To achieve this, all our men and women in uniform must continually rededicate themselves to the oaths that they have sworn to subject themselves to democratic and constituted authority. Let me, as I close, congratulate the Commandant and the entire Academy for the incredible job that you've done and you're doing here. I commend your ability to innovatively combine military training with conventional academic studies for the cadets here, as well as offering postgraduate studies for military officers and civilians, in line with the practice in the best military academies across the globe. But last by no means the least, let me congratulate the parents and guardians of these young men and women for permitting them, and also to thank them for permitting these young people to enroll in the military and for the support that you've given them over the years. I pray that the Almighty God will reward the sacrifices that you have made for your children and your wards. And I wish you all journeying mercies as you return to your various destinations. Thank you all for listening. Long live the Federal Republic.